following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com. This live video stream is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln and online at merealty.com. It is 2 minutes past 4 p.m. Time for the 4 p.m. 411 here on WLCN 96.3 FM. My name is Loyd Kirby. I am the marketing manager here as well as host for the next half hour as we talk to a man whose name has been in the news lately, and not particularly because you've wanted it to be, I guess.
Yeah.
So our guest, Dr. Silas McCormick, who is the president of Lincoln Christian University. Dr. McCormick, thank you for being with us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Loyd.
Sure thing. And unless people have been under a rock, here in the Lincoln and Logan County and further reaching area, I'm sure, Lincoln Christian University announced that it will be ceasing operations in the not too distant future. We've still got a ways to go yet, though, several months, but I'm sure your schedule has been putting out fires and quashing rumors, and
there's been a lot of communication. Yeah, we made the announcement, I want to say October 11th, I think. Okay. Was the announcement that we were going to cease academic operations at the end of the year, something that we'd obviously hoped to avoid in moving to our new model, but really just weren't able to overcome people's hesitancy, particularly prospective students, about, are we going to be here long enough for them to finish their degree? And I think the last time I was on here, I told you one of the things I was concerned about was if enough people acted in that manner, it would become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that part's obviously been disappointing. But yeah, it's been quite a couple weeks.
And if you have questions or comments for Dr. McCormick, 217-648-5510, the number to call here, or you can send us an email, 4pm411 at WLCNonline.com. So I was looking back through our YouTube channel, and the first time you were here was, let me see, September of 2022.
Yeah.
And that was when, I'm trying to think, was that when we had restructuring?
We had moved to the new model. We'd announced it in February of 22, but then that was because we finished out that year. So that would have been right after the incoming class last year, so the first of the new model.
Okay. And then the next time you were with us was August of 2023.
Yep.
And we were hoping those changes that were enacted back in 2022 would have a ripple effect and turn things around. Was it just too much to overcome, or can you kind of pinpoint because of A, B, and C, this is why we're today?
Not really. Like, in higher ed, there are risk factors you can identify, right? One of them is schools smaller than 2,000. There's just sort of a critical mass that you need to be able to afford the kinds of things that the students expect. Rural schools tend to have more of a challenge. Schools that aren't founded with a substantial endowment, right? So John D. Rockefeller founds the University of Chicago with like $1 million grant at the turn of the century. We started with Earl Hargrove and a good idea. That sort of, if you look at the risk factors and you look at these schools that are closing, and unfortunately there are a lot of schools that are closing, there were a lot of things that we were trying to overcome, and our efforts with the new model really did have some areas of tremendous success, including, downsizing the size of our campus, reducing our debt. Many of our donors, really most of our donors, stuck with us, revising our curriculum. The one thing we just didn't seem like we were able to overcome was our enrollment. Prospective students were just understandably concerned that we wouldn't be around long enough for them to finish. And we missed our first enrollment goal, which wasn't a complete surprise because you recruit for a cycle in the prior, semester. And so we were trying to finish our traditional program well. So we missed that first enrollment cycle goal. And then this spring, we tried reorganizing our enrollment department, and that helped, but that was a lost cycle as well. And spring enrollment cycle is always smaller than fall. And so this third one was really the one that was going to be sort of critical. And I think we budgeted for 60 new students. We'd hoped for 80, and I think we got something in the neighborhood of 35. And of course, we've been pretty transparent with people about that, which led then to a lot of questions about what does this mean. So the last time I was here, that was sort of like a harbinger. We knew that the numbers didn't look great, but we also knew these students enroll late, and so since that time, it's been sort of the effort to determine, okay, now we know what it is, but what does it mean? And our trustees didn't meet until a couple of weeks ago, and that was really the first opportunity to lay out everything before them and let them make a decision. So
enrollment is down and not going to be at the level where it's enough to sustain the university. Does that then, I guess, what is the process that went from that point of figuring out, okay, there's not enough to sustain us to where we're at now?
So we actually, we looked at our numbers and concluded that our financial position, and I know this is going to sound crazy to people, but our financial position is actually as good as it's ever been at this particular moment. The problem is with 3 enrollment cycles short, you look down the road and you realize that you're going to have revenue problems in each of the following 3 semesters plus because of that shortfall.
Yeah, because I believe during one of the previous times you were here, you had said the debt that the institution had been paid down tremendously, I think.
Yeah, by the end of this year, it'll be about 2.6, down from 9 in 2019. So that really was the missing piece, but it just kept getting missed, and every time it got missed, it got harder to overcome. So when it became apparent where we were going to land, or at least approximately, we sat down and put together a document for our board of trustees that basically outlined here what we think the options are. And so we outlined really 4 of them. One of them was to continue on the way we were doing, which my cabinet and I didn't think was an option, but we felt we had to articulate for them, here's why. One was to quote unquote close, and we actually didn't think that was the best option. I'll come back to that in a second. The third was to potentially convert the institution to a non-credit foundation of some kind, either granting scholarships to students to go elsewhere, or to offer non-credit offerings, or some combination thereof. And the fourth one, which was the one we ultimately recommended to them, was some form of collaboration. And so that's why I said basically stick a pin in closing. And so what's happening here really is we're sort of bequeathing a piece of the institution, the seminary, to another institution, Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri. And then at the end of the year, we'll stop granting degrees and awarding academic credit, but the organization will still exist at least for a season, and that part remains sort of up in the air. We've announced the 2 decisions we've made, which is passing along the seminary to Ozark and passing along the endowment to support it. But there remains really a lot of open questions to resolve by the time we get to May. Okay,
and we're at 10 after, so maybe we'll dig into some of those questions. Probably won't find answers, but...
Probably not.
Again, our guest is Dr. Silas McCormick. If you have questions or comments, he is the president of Lincoln Christian University. Our phone number here, 217-648-5510, or you can email us a question at 4pm411@wlcnonline.com. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Dr. McCormick. This live video stream is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. And we are back on the 4 p.m. 411 with Dr. Silas McCormick. We invite you to tune in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. when Breanne Titus from the Community Action Partnership of Central Illinois will be the guest on the Viewpoint program. And she will be here with host Dara Entwistle from 8 a.m. until 8:30 at its new time, starting 15 minutes earlier than it had been. But as I mentioned today, Dr. McCormick from Lincoln Christian University is here with us. And we're talking about all things Lincoln Christian University. So you mentioned that Ozark Christian College would be, that LCU would be folded into that, or whatever the proper terminology is. How does that happen? Did they hear, LCU's in distress, maybe we can help out, or do you go to them and say, hey, here's what's happening, do you want to support on board?
So in this particular case, I approached their president in the fall of 22, and I said, there's obviously a chance that this doesn't work. If this does not work the way we want it to, but we are able to get ourselves financially healthy enough to be acquired in some fashion, is that something you would be open to? Because that's a conversation I had with a couple of institutions that I thought were appropriate, but there were circumstances in some cases where, there's some timing related to that, right? If the president's going to retire at the end of the year, this is not, or if the institution is not in maybe financially much better health than us, even if that might not be obvious to someone on the outside. Matt Proctor is the name of the president at Ozark. I met with him once in the fall of 22, and I sort of gave him an update in the spring of 23 and said we missed another enrollment goal. We don't think it's time yet, but if this does become a possibility, are you still open to it? And he said yes. So then at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, I called him and said, I think we need to escalate the conversation. So that was us approaching them. That was always sort of a B plan. The strong preference was to be able to do what we were trying to do, but there was also this thought, if we could get financially healthy enough to leave a legacy, that would be better than just being done, which is where we probably would have been in February of 22.
Okay. And as you mentioned there, rather than just being done, so Lincoln Christian University, while it's ceasing academic operations, there will still be an entity around that with a connection to the university. Can you kind of talk about that?
Sure.
As much as you know about it.
Sure. Well, and what I primarily meant was that we would be leaving the legacy of the seminary with Ozark, both in the form of the seminary and the endowment to support it. But it is true that come June 1st, I do think it's highly likely that there will continue to be something. We probably have to change its name. It might become the Lincoln Christian University Foundation or Lincoln Christian Institute. And there are a whole lot of circumstances that remain to be determined, including the ongoing conversation with Ozark, including what we may yet be able to sell from some of the assets we have that might pay off the debt. But at the end of that, at the end of the academic year, there's really one of two tracks available to us. One of them is what is called winding up, which is just like, when a loved one dies and you're responsible for paying all of their final bills and all of those things and selling their, that just takes time. The other possibility is that process actually results in a sufficient body of assets to do something with, whether that's, because in the first scenario, it's a nonprofit organization, so whatever assets are left at the end of the winding up process, the entity goes away and the assets go to someone with a similar mission, somebody like Ozark. In the other scenario, if there were sufficient assets and circumstances played out as such, you might be able to continue some kind of Lincoln Christian Institute as a small-scale, non-credit granting sort of entity that would allow our community to have a place to be together, whether that's in the form of annual conferences or something like that. It would not likely be anything of the scale of what we have been in the past, but it might be a sort of home base for that community. I think both of those things are realistic possibilities, though I routinely have to caution people over the last couple of weeks. There's just a lot of things that are going to have to be sorted out before we get really a sense of which of those two tracks are more likely.
Right. And just to be clear there, you did use several weasel words within that.
Yes, those are my colleagues love my use of weasel words, but it's how I am able to be as accurate as possible.
Right, sure. So before, when the university was kind of restructuring and scaling back and so forth, you were able to sell some of the the ground and the buildings and so forth. Does that? Oops, we just dropped another show or dropped in our ratings. Is that a possibility that perhaps folks who have helped out before or have purchased assets before might be interested, or how does that work? Do you just kind of put everything on, I don't know, eBay or whatever, and say?
I don't know either, quite honestly. I have done a little bit of homework. We actually have, there's some level of irony, we actually have quite a bit in the way of assets, probably as much as $8 or $9 million. The problem is there are just many, almost $4 million of that is in endowment, which means that money is devoted to scholarships, not operations. Mm-hmm. We own a couple of farms where we have what's called a remainderman interest, where that farm will come to us free and clear upon the death of someone who has a life estate. Mm-hmm. But today, they're still there, and so we're still here. So in sorting all of that out, it will be interesting to see how that ultimately ends up shaking out. But there will clearly still be something there. And I'm just cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to do something useful with it. Selling the campus is obviously, that's an asset, and one of the things we want to try and do is be a good citizen with whatever that happens with. I'm not sure who might be willing to buy it. I don't know. I've done a little bit of homework, and I've looked into who auctioned off McMurray College. Mm-hmm. But our best luck thus far has been really the kinds of conversations with people in our network who know other people. Oh, okay. And so there's not a great urgency. We have until May where we're still using it. Right. But ideally, we would really like to do something that's good for the community with that particular piece. And kind of preferably not before May, because we're still using it. Sure. And I'm spending a lot of my time right now on some of the other assets. I mentioned, for example, one of the farms. We have a farm that's appraised at $3.5 million, and our debt at the end of the year is going to be about 2.6. Now, we can't sell it because, but we might be able to sell our interest to someone else at a discount, or we might be able to persuade the person with the life estate to take a larger lump sum payout. And those are the kinds of things that I'm exploring now to try and address that that last piece of the debt, which then falls, some of the other questions hinge on. Sure.
Okay. We're at 20 minutes past the hour, so we'll go ahead and take our second break. Once again, Dr. Silas McCormick is our guest. 217-648-5510, the number to call if you have questions or comments for Dr. McCormick, the president of Lincoln Christian University. We'll be back with Dr. McCormick in 2 minutes. And we are back on the 4 p.m. 411. Our guest is Dr. Silas McCormick, president of Lincoln Christian University, which will be ceasing academic operations and, I don't know what the proper term is, taken over, folded into...
Partially acquired. We're actually learning the terminology as we go ourselves. I don't know.
All right. So Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri. And you mentioned to me off the air that there's actually... I wouldn't say some history, but definitely some strong connections.
Yeah, very much so.
Ozark and Lincoln Christian University.
Yeah, very, very similar missions, founded only a couple of years apart. Quite a geographic distance a ways, but long history even of, they have historically been an undergraduate institution. They started their first graduate program, I think, a year ago. And so for many years, they would send students to our seminary who would then go back and teach there. Okay. And so I think we counted that there were something like that there are presently, I think, 11 members of their faculty who are graduates of our seminary, including their president and their entire cabinet. Wow. Which is hugely ironic because I'm a dropout of our seminary. I kept finding myself in roles where I couldn't keep going, but a dropout of our seminary, and my cabinet only includes one graduate. So there is a tremendous amount of similarity, a long sort of shared history, a very close shared mission, and a lot of personalities that have churned between the two for a long time. So people who find themselves in my position often look for some kind of collaborative partner. I'm really grateful for one that really is a good fit.
And so in sort of wrapping things up with LCU or downside, whatever happens in the future, right. Trying to find the right weasel word there.
It's a real challenge because there's so much of it still moving around.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So what... I guess for you personally, what is sort of the takeaway from this for you personally? I mean, obviously you've been the bearer of bad news here and continue to be for a while yet. But have there been any positive things that positive moments or memories that have come out of this for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is my 11th year at LCU, my third as president, and a lot of that has been very difficult, but I have met a lot of incredible people in that time period. People who have graduated from us, sometimes not graduated from us, but still gone on to do really amazing things, and I'm grateful for having been able to be a part of that. And at a personal level, and this is hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it, personally, I struggle with the idea that, wow, you really failed sort of epically at this. I have grown a lot. One of the concerns I had was, am I going to be a worse person after being in charge? Right. And I'm a better person than I was. I'm not saying I would want to do any of this again or that any of it is fun. But people have a real fear of failing in our culture, and there is a lot of growth in, I don't know, failing with dignity. Like, I care very much about this community, and it was worth spending the effort. It's still worth spending the effort. It's worth trying to preserve a legacy, and good things have happened and will continue to happen because of the work that we did. So it's been hard, but I'm grateful for it.
So what... Again, you've mentioned several times that it's sort of a ongoing process.
I know, it's like nailing Jello to the wall, isn't it? I'm not helpful.
Yeah, well, no, you're fine. You're eating up a half hour for me on a Tuesday afternoon, so I appreciate that. But moving forward, are there certain steps or certain a certain timeline by which things have to be wrapped up or in motion to get to the finish line for you?
Yeah, so we're working with the Higher Learning Commission, the Association of Theological Schools, KCREP, which is our accrediting body for the counseling program, to try and help our students land well. We left ourselves enough time for our students to know now so that they can register for spring. If they can take an extra class or two, they'll be able to do that. We've added the unusual May term because our fiscal year ends May 31. So we're going to end the semester a week early so we can do an intensive week that first week of May and try and get some stragglers. We're really working hard to try and get as many people through as we can. And then the one thing I encourage people is we've given a lot of warning to our students and our employees, which is the right thing to do, but it's also scary because people are going to think that we're already closed. So if you support the school, don't stop supporting the school because we need to finish well. But yeah, and those timelines are sort of evolving because it's been about 2 weeks, and as you can imagine, our phone rang off the hook from a lot of constituents, some of whom hold a fair amount of authority over us, and so we're working through that. It's sort of a moving target.
And so as we approach that deadline date, I guess, the end of May, then you mentioned it here before, but if we can revisit that, you said there is the possibility of some entity affiliated with Lincoln Christian University still being in existence in some form, not necessarily an educational or certainly not a degree granting institution, but maybe, I don't think you said alumni association, but different organization. Yeah,
we own property still, and we have some trusts that we administer. Like, there's still business we have to do on the other side of May 31st. It's just not the business of being a university. And so we'll see what that ends up shaping at. It is possible that if the conversations with Ozark were to go into the direction of a full-fledged merger, that could end up actually going away May 31st. But my guess is that's pretty unlikely. I think it's far more likely that there will still be business to do on June 1. And so there will still be something doing that business.
Okay. And if folks have questions, maybe they've heard rumors or maybe they're just interested in things, who could they turn to or where could they seek answers to those questions?
So the easiest way to do that is info@lincolnchristian.edu, and then we will sort that out to determine which kind of question it is and which person ought to answer it.
Okay, so email to info@lincolnchristian.edu.
Yep.
Very good. So Dr. Silas McCormick, thank you for being here. Time is 4:30, so we'll let you be on your way. Once again, tune into the Viewpoint program tomorrow when Dara Entwistle will welcome Breanne Titus. She is with the Capsule Community Action Partnership of Central Illinois. That program runs from 8 to 8:30 tomorrow. And I'm Loyd Kirby, the marketing manager here at WLCN, and we will talk to you next time on Viewpoint. This live video stream is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.